Jia checked her air tank levels one more time. Everything looked good. The young Nebulan researcher moved carefully among the strange plants that covered the moon's surface. Her blue skin shimmered under the light of the 3 small suns overhead. Sample 27 shows signs of adaptive growth. She spoke into her recorder. The plant appears to change its leaf structure based on light levels. Jia loved her work. As a botanist from the water world of Nebula 6, she had spent 5 years studying plant life on dry worlds. Her people rarely left their ocean homes, but Jia had always been different. She wanted to see the stars. The small moon orbited a gas giant. At the edge of charted space, no one important ever came here. That's why Jia liked it. Just her and the plants, and the quiet. A strange noise made her turn around. Her scanner was beeping with a warning. Something big had entered the moon's atmosphere, something that wasn't supposed to be there. Jia grabbed her sample bag and ran toward her small research ship. The ground shook beneath her feet. Through her breathing mask, she could smell something burning. Not good. When she reached her ship, she saw the problem right away. The engine panel was sparking with blue light. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse had hit it. She wouldn't be able to leave until she fixed it. Stay calm, she told herself, reaching for her toolkit. Just fix the panel and... A shadow fell over her. Jia looked up and froze. The ship above her was massive and dark. Its hull was covered in sharp metal points that made it look like a floating weapon. Jia had seen pictures of ships like this before. Every researcher in this sector had been warned about them. Vorg ships. The Vorg were reptile-like hunters who saw other species as nothing more than food. They were tall, strong, and had scales as tough as armor. And they were hungry. Always hungry. A beam of light shot down from the Vorg ship, freezing Jia in place. She couldn't move, couldn't run. The light pulled her up slowly into the air. "No, please," she cried, but there was no one to hear her. Her tools and samples fell from her hands as she was lifted toward the open hatch of the enemy ship. Inside, the air was hot and smelled like meat and metal. 5 Vorg warriors stood in a circle around her as the light beam dropped her onto the hard floor. They were even more frightening up close, tall as 2 Nebulans, with yellow eyes and teeth like knives. "Look what we found," one said, poking Jia with the end of a spear. "A water breather, far from home." The largest Vorg stepped forward. He wore a necklace made of small bones and had red markings painted on his scales. "The captain," Jia guessed. "A Nebulan," the captain said, his voice deep and rough. "We don't see your kind often. Too soft, too wet." He grabbed Jia's arm, turning it to see how her skin caught the light. But such interesting colors. Jia tried to pull away, but the captain's grip was too strong. "The victory feast is tomorrow," he said to his crew. "We were going to roast that 4-legged thing we caught last week, but I think this will be much better." He leaned close to Jia's face. "Blue meat is rare. A delicacy." The other Vorg made sounds of approval, some clicking their claws together in excitement. "Take it to the holding cells," the captain ordered. "Keep it alive until tomorrow. I want it fresh for the feast." 2 warriors grabbed Jia by her arms and dragged her away. As they pulled her down a dark hallway, she caught sight of other cells. Some contained parts of machines. Others held bones. The warriors threw her into an empty cell and activated a red energy field across the opening. "Rest well, little blue meal," one said with a laugh. "Tomorrow you feed the mighty Vorg." As their heavy footsteps faded away, Jia sank to the floor. She was going to be eaten, cooked and served at an alien BBQ. Unless she could find a way out. Fast. Han wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on the mining drill. The human outpost on asteroid K7 was hot, dusty, and boring. Just how Han liked it. "Engine fixed yet?" called Sue, his supervisor. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. "Almost done," Han replied. "This old drill keeps breaking, but I can keep it running." Han was the best mechanic at the outpost. He could fix anything with moving parts. The mining company paid him well to keep their machines working in this remote corner of space. 20 humans lived and worked at the outpost. They mined rare metals from the asteroid and sent them back to Earth. The work was hard but simple. After finishing with the drill, Han walked to his small control room. This was his favorite place. While other workers relaxed in the common area after their shifts, Han liked to sit alone with his machines and scanners. He turned on his long-range scanner and watched the screen light up. This was against the rules. The company said all scanners should be used only for mining work. But Han was curious about what was out there. The scanner beeped. Han sat up straight. Something big was moving near the small moon that orbited the gas giant. He adjusted the scanner for a better look. "A Vorg ship," he whispered. Everyone knew about the Vorg. The reptile aliens were dangerous hunters who attacked ships and outposts. 3 years ago, they had killed 5 humans at a research station. Since then, all human operations had orders to avoid the Vorg at all costs. Han was about to turn off the scanner when he noticed something else. A small ship on the moon's surface. Too small for Vorg. The scanner showed it was damaged. "Someone's in trouble down there," Han said to himself. He should report this to Sue. The outpost would contact Earth Command, and they would decide what to do. But that could take days. By then, whoever was on that moon might be dead. The scanner picked up something new. A strange signal, weak and broken. Not a standard distress call. The pattern repeated over and over. Han recorded the signal and played it back. It wasn't in any language he knew, but something about it felt urgent, desperate. He looked at the time. Sue and the others would be eating dinner now. No one would miss him for at least 2 hours. Han grabbed his tool belt and walked quickly to the shuttle bay. The small maintenance shuttle wasn't meant for rescue missions, but it had good shields and could move fast if needed. "System check complete," the shuttle computer said as Han started the engines. "Destination." Han hesitated. What he was about to do was against every rule. If the Vorg caught him, they would kill him. If Sue found out he took the shuttle without permission, she would fire him. But someone needed help. "Set course for the 3rd moon of the gas giant," Han told the computer. "And run silent. No signals in or out." The shuttle bay doors opened, and Han guided the small ship out into space. As the asteroid grew smaller behind him, he felt a mix of fear and excitement. "Better have a good excuse ready," he muttered to himself. "Sue is going to be very angry." Han checked his scanner again. The Vorg ship had moved. It was now in orbit around the moon, right above where the small damaged ship was. "Too late to turn back now," Han said. He pushed the shuttle to maximum speed. The gas giant grew larger in his view screen. Its huge swirling storms looked peaceful from a distance. The 3rd moon was a small gray dot against the giant planet. Han took a deep breath as the shuttle's computer began the approach sequence. He had no plan, no backup, and no idea what kind of alien had sent that strange signal. "Just going to check on a sensor array," he practiced saying. "That's my story if anyone asks." But as the shuttle drew closer to the moon, Han could see the massive Vorg ship clearly now. It hovered like a predator over its prey. Someone was in danger, and Han was about to fly right into the middle of it. Gia sat in the corner of her cell, watching the red energy field that kept her trapped. The Vorg ship was hot and smelled like a mix of meat and metal. Her skin, used to the cool waters of her home world, felt dry and tight. 3 hours had passed since her capture. Ja had tried to stay calm and think. Nebulans were known for their smart minds, not their fighting skills. She would have to use her brain to escape. 2 Vorg guards walked past her cell. They carried large, sharp tools that looked like cooking equipment. "The feast preparations have begun," one guard said. "The captain wants the blue one prepared with special spices." The other guard made a hungry sound. "I have never tasted Nebulan before. Is the meat good?" Very tender, I hear, especially when cooked slowly. They laughed and moved away down the corridor. Jia's heart beat faster with fear. The feast would happen soon. She had to act now. She looked around her cell. There wasn't much, just a hard bench and a small air vent near the floor. The vent was too small for her to fit through, but maybe she could use it another way. Jia moved to the vent and examined it closely. Warm air came through it from somewhere else on the ship. She put her ear close and heard the faint hum of machinery. The ship's communication system might be connected to these vents, she whispered to herself. Back on her world, Jia had studied more than just plants. She also knew about machines and computers. All Nebulan scientists learned many subjects. She took off one of her sample containers from her belt. It was small and made of metal. She carefully bent it into a thin tool and reached into the vent. After some work, she pulled out a small section of wire and computer parts. The ship's systems ran through these walls. This could be her chance. Jia knew the basics of most ship designs. If Vorg ships were like others, she might be able to send a signal for help, or at least learn more about the ship. She worked quickly, connecting wires from the vent to her small wrist computer. Her fingers moved with care despite her fear. If the guards came back and saw what she was doing, she would be in even more danger. Her wrist computer lit up with strange symbols. The Vorg language. She couldn't read it, but she could see patterns in the data. Ship maps, she said softly, and communication channels. Jia tried to access the ship's communication system. If she could send a distress signal, maybe someone would hear it. The chance was small, but it was better than waiting to be cooked. She programmed a simple repeating pattern, the universal sign for danger among her people. The signal would be weak and might not get far, but she had to try. Heavy footsteps sounded in the corridor. Quickly, Jia pushed the wires back into the vent and hid her wrist computer in her sleeve. A large Vorg appeared at her cell. This one wore a different kind of armor, with many small bones attached to it. He carried a tray of bottles filled with different colored powders. "Good, you're still alive," he said. "I am the feast master. I need to decide which spices will taste best with your meat." He pressed a button, and part of the energy field opened just enough for him to slide the scanner through. "Stay back," he warned. "This just takes a small skin sample." The scanner looked like a thin needle. Jia backed away, but in the small cell, there wasn't far to go. The needle pricked her arm, taking a tiny piece of her blue skin. The feast master looked at the scanner's results. "Interesting. Your flesh has a high salt content. We will need to adjust our recipes." He made some notes on a small device, then looked at Jia again. "The preparation area is almost ready. You will be moved there in 1 hour. The captain likes his meals fresh, so you will be alive until the last moment." After the feast master left, Jia checked her wrist computer. The distress signal was sending, but very weakly. It would only reach a short distance from the ship. "Please," she whispered to the empty air. "Someone hear me." In the darkness of her cell, Jia watched the small blinking light on her computer. It was her only hope now. Han's small shuttle moved quietly through space. He had turned off all non-essential systems to avoid being detected by the Vorg ship. Only life support and basic controls remained on. "Just a little closer," he whispered to himself. The massive Vorg ship hung in orbit above the moon. It was at least 20 times bigger than Han's shuttle. Its dark metal hull was covered with sharp spikes and weapon ports. Han had only seen pictures of Vorg ships before. In real life, it looked even more dangerous. His scanner picked up the strange signal again. It was coming from inside the Vorg ship, not from the moon's surface as he had first thought. "Someone's on that ship," Han said. "Someone who doesn't want to be there." He recorded the signal and studied it. The pattern repeated in groups of 3, like someone tapping out a code. It wasn't a standard human distress call, but the meaning seemed clear. "Help me." Han checked his options. He should turn around and report this to the outpost. That was the safe thing to do, the smart thing. But they'll be dead by then, he said to the empty shuttle. Han had heard stories about what the Vorg did to their prisoners. They were hunters who saw other species as food. If someone was sending this signal from inside the Vorg ship, they didn't have much time left. A crazy idea formed in Han's mind. He opened his toolkit and pulled out his work ID card. All human outpost workers had them. The card had the mining company logo and identified Han as a maintenance engineer. This might work, he said, if I'm lucky. And if they're stupid. Han's shuttle computer beeped with a warning. A scan beam from the Vorg ship had just swept over him. They had spotted him. No turning back now. He turned on his communication system and opened a channel to the Vorg ship. Vorg vessel, this is Maintenance Engineer Han from Mining Outpost KK-7, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I am here to perform scheduled systems inspection as per Section 12 of the Non-Aggression Treaty. There was no such treaty with the Vorg. Han was making it up. But the Vorg might not know that. They might not want to risk starting a conflict if they thought official agreements were in place. After a long minute of silence, a rough voice answered. Human vessel, identify your purpose again. Han took a deep breath. I am a maintenance engineer. My job is to check life support systems on all ships in this sector. It is a safety requirement. He paused, then added, if you refuse inspection, I must report it to Earth Command. Another long silence followed. Han's hands were sweaty on the shuttle controls. If the Vorg decided to fire on him, his small ship would be destroyed instantly. Finally, the voice returned. Approach Docking Bay 3. You will be met by guards. Any weapons will be taken. Understood, Han replied. I carry only standard maintenance tools. As the shuttle moved toward the Vorg ship, Han couldn't believe his bluff had worked. Either the Vorg captain was being cautious, or he was curious about this strange human. Han guided his shuttle into the massive docking bay. Through the view screen, he could see several Vorg warriors waiting. They were even more frightening in person, tall reptilian beings with sharp teeth and claws. Each one carried weapons that looked designed to cause pain. Just act like you belong here, Han told himself as he prepared to exit his shuttle. Like you do this every day. He put on his work jacket with a mining company logo and clipped his tool belt around his waist. The tools were meant for fixing machines, but they could be weapons if needed. With one last deep breath, Han opened the shuttle door and stepped out to face the Vorg. The air on their ship was hot and smelled like cooking meat. The thought made his stomach turn. I'm here for the inspection, he said, holding up his ID card. Where would you like me to start? 4 Vorg guards surrounded Han as he stepped onto the ship. They were even taller up close, with rough scales in dark green and brown colors. Their yellow eyes watched his every move. Your tools, one guard said, pointing at Han's belt. Han held up his hands. I need these for the inspection. They're not weapons. The guard growled but didn't take the tools. Instead, he pushed Han forward. The captain wants to see you first. They walked through long hallways. The ship was huge inside. Han tried to remember the path they took, in case he needed to find his way back quickly. He also looked for signs of the person who had sent the distress signal. The walls were covered with strange marks and symbols. Some looked like hunting trophies, bones, and skins from creatures Han had never seen before. The sight made him feel sick, but he kept his face calm. They reached a large door with red lights around it. It opened to reveal the ship's control room. A huge Vorg stood in the center. He was bigger than the others, with red markings on his scales and a necklace made of small bones. I am Captain Kraz, the large Vorg said. You claim to be here for an inspection. Han nodded and held up his ID card again. Yes, sir. Regular safety checks are required on all ships in this sector. The captain took Han's card and looked at it closely. We have not heard of this requirement before. It's a new rule, Han said quickly, after the incident last year. What incident? The captain asked. Han made something up. A ship's life support failed. Many died. Now we check all ships to prevent it happening again. Captain Kraz seemed to think about this. Han's heart beat fast as he waited. If the captain didn't believe him, he would be killed, or worse, become part of the feast himself. Very well, the captain finally said. But one guard will go with you. And you will only check life support systems, nothing else. Han nodded. That's all I need to see. A guard named Trex was assigned to watch Han. They left the control room and headed to the lower levels of the ship. So, what's the special occasion? Han asked as they walked, trying to sound casual. The ship seems busy. Trex made a sound like a laugh. Victory feast tonight. The captain caught something special. Oh, what kind of food do Vorg like? Han kept his voice friendly, though the question made him feel ill. Meat. All kinds. Tonight, we have Nebulan. Blue meat, very rare. Han had never heard of Nebulans before, but now he knew who had sent the distress signal. Some poor alien was being kept as food. He needed to find them fast. They reached the life support control room. Han pretended to check the systems, opening panels, and looking at wires. All the while, he was thinking of a plan. I need to check air quality in all sections, Han said, including the lower levels. Trex shook his head. No, only this room. Han pointed to a made-up reading on his tool. There's a problem with the airflow. I need to check where it's coming from. If it fails, everyone on the ship could die. The guard looked worried. After thinking for a moment, he nodded. Quick check only. They walked down to the lowest level of the ship. Han could smell cooking spices now, mixing with the metallic air of the ship. The feast preparations were underway. Time was running out. As they turned a corner, Han saw a row of cells with red energy fields across their openings. Most were empty, but in one, he caught a glimpse of blue skin. The Nebulan. Han needed to get rid of his guard. He stopped walking and pointed at a ceiling panel. That doesn't look right, he said. Hold this for me. He handed Trex a small tool. When the guard looked up at the ceiling, Han quickly pulled another tool from his belt, a heavy wrench. With a silent apology, he brought it down hard on the back of the guard's head. Trex fell to the floor with a thud. He wasn't dead, just knocked out. Han dragged him into an empty room and took his key card. Now he had to find the Nebulan before anyone noticed the missing guard. Han moved quickly along the row of cells. Most were empty, some held broken machines, and one contained what looked like a pile of bones. Han tried not to think about what had happened to those creatures. At the end of the row, he found what he was looking for, a cell with a blue-skinned alien sitting in the corner. The alien looked up as Han approached. Her eyes were large and dark, with no whites in them. Her blue skin had a slight shine, like it was wet. She wore what looked like a researcher's outfit with many small pockets and tools. She was clearly female, with a gentle face that showed both fear and intelligence. When she saw Han, her eyes widened. "Hello," Han said softly. "I picked up your signal. I'm here to help." The blue alien stood up quickly. She spoke, but the words made no sense to Han. It was a flowing language with clicks and whistles mixed in. Han pointed to himself. "Han," he said clearly. Then he pointed to her. The alien understood. She pointed to herself and said, "Jia." Han nodded and held up the guard's key card. "I'm going to get you out, Jia." He swiped the card against the control panel beside the cell. The red energy field disappeared. Jia stepped out cautiously, looking both ways down the corridor. She spoke again in her language, making urgent hand motions. Han couldn't understand the words, but her meaning was clear. They needed to hurry. From down the hallway, they heard heavy footsteps approaching. Someone was coming. "Hide," Han whispered, pulling Jia into a dark corner between two cells. A large Vorg walked by, carrying a tray of what looked like cooking tools. He stopped near Jia's empty cell and stared at it in confusion. Before the Vorg could raise an alarm, Han stepped out from the shadows. He swung his heavy wrench and hit the Vorg on the side of the head. The alien went down with a thud, dropping his tray with a loud clatter. "That noise will bring others," Han said, though he knew Ja couldn't understand him. "We need to move." He grabbed her hand and pulled her down the corridor, away from the cells. Ja followed willingly, moving quickly despite her shorter legs. They turned a corner and found themselves in a large kitchen area. The room was hot, with several fires burning in stone pits. Spices and strange smells filled the air. This was where the feast would be prepared, where Ja would have been cooked if Han hadn't arrived. Jia made a small sound of fear when she saw the cooking area. Han squeezed her hand to reassure her. "Not going to happen," he said firmly. "We're getting out of here." From his pocket, Han pulled out a small device. It was his translator, a project he had been working on during his free time at the outpost. It wasn't perfect, but it might help them communicate. He held it up to Jia. "Can you speak into this? It might help us understand each other." Jia looked at the device curiously, then spoke several words. The translator hummed, then produced broken English. "Soon. Feast. 1 hour. Escape must." Han nodded. 1 hour until the feast starts. Not much time. He spoke into the translator, and it produced sounds in Jia's language. Her eyes lit up when she heard it. "Shuttle. We go. But need way out." Jia nodded eagerly. She pointed to her wrist, where a small computer was strapped. She pressed some buttons, and a rough map of the ship appeared as a hologram. "You managed to hack their systems." Han was impressed. "Smart." Jia pointed to one section of the map, then to herself and Han, showing where they were. Then she pointed to another area, the docking bay where Han's shuttle waited. But between them and the shuttle were many Vorg. The ship's layout appeared on the hologram, showing at least 20 Vorg moving around between their position and the docking bay. Han sighed. "We can't fight our way through that many." A loud alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. A voice spoke in the Vorg language, sounding angry and urgent. Jia's face showed fear. She spoke into the translator. "They know. I gone. Hunt begins." Han looked at the kitchen around them. His eyes fell on the control panel for the cooking fires. An idea formed in his mind. "I think I know how to create a distraction." Han looked at the kitchen control panel. He pointed to different buttons and levers. "If we overload the cooking systems, we can create a lot of smoke and confusion," he said. The translator changed his words into Jia's language. Jia nodded and moved to the panel. Her 6-fingered hands worked quickly, pressing buttons in a specific order. She seemed to understand the technology better than Han expected. "You know how this works?" Han asked. Jia spoke into the translator. "Similar to science tools from my world." The alarm continued to sound throughout the ship. They could hear Vorg shouting and running in nearby corridors. Time was running out. Han took out his tools and opened the main control box beneath the panel. Inside were many wires and small computer parts. He connected 2 wires that weren't supposed to touch. "This should overload the system," he said. "But we need more than just smoke." Jia pointed to several large containers near the cooking fires. She spoke into the translator again. "Cooking oil. Very hot. Very dangerous." Han understood her plan immediately. If the oil containers ruptured when the system overloaded, they would create chaos. The hot oil would spill everywhere, forcing the Vorg to deal with the emergency instead of chasing them. "Good idea," Han said with a smile. "You're pretty smart for someone who was almost dinner." Jia didn't understand the joke, but she smiled back anyway. There was something about this human that made her feel safe, even in this dangerous place. Together, they rigged the control panel to fail. Han set a timer for 2 minutes, enough time for them to get away from the kitchen before everything went wrong. "Now we need a path to my shuttle," Han said. "Can your wrist computer show us a safe route?" Jia brought up the ship map again and pointed to a narrow passage that ran alongside the main corridors. It looked like a maintenance tunnel, probably used by service robots. "Perfect," Han said. "The Vorg are too big to follow us in there." The timer on the control panel showed 1 minute left. They needed to move now. Han grabbed Jia's hand, and they ran to a small door at the back of the kitchen. It opened into the narrow passage Jia had found on the map. The space was tight, especially for Han, but they could move through it. "This way," Han said, pointing in the direction of the docking bay. They had only gone a short distance when they heard a loud boom from the kitchen. The overload had worked. Alarms changed their tone, and they could hear Vorg shouting in panic. "It worked," Han said with a grin. They moved as fast as they could through the narrow passage. Jia was quicker than Han, her smaller body better suited for the tight space, but she stayed close to him, not wanting to get separated. After several minutes of crawling and squeezing through the passage, they'd reached a small opening. Han peered through it and saw the docking bay. His shuttle was still there, with 2 Vorg guards standing nearby. "Only 2 guards," Han whispered. "Better than 20. Jia touched Han's arm to get his attention. She held up her wrist computer and pointed to a control panel across the docking bay. "Can make bay doors open. Air pressure problem. Guards must leave." Han was impressed again. "You can create a warning in the docking bay so the guards have to leave." Jia nodded. She typed quickly on her small computer, connecting to the ship's systems. After a moment, new alarms began to sound in the docking bay. Red lights flashed, and a voice spoke in the Vorg language. The 2 guards looked at each other, then ran out of the bay toward a side door. "Now's our chance," Han said. "My shuttle is right there. Can you run fast?" Jia gave him a look that seemed to say, "Watch me." Her face showed a new confidence that hadn't been there when Han first found her in the cell. They pushed open the small maintenance door and ran across the docking bay toward Han's shuttle. The bay was large and open, with nowhere to hide if someone came in. Han reached the shuttle first and opened the door. He turned to make sure Jia was right behind him. She was only steps away when the main door to the bay slid open. Captain Kraz stood there, a large weapon in his hands and rage in his yellow eyes. "Get in," Han shouted to Jia as Captain Kraz raised his weapon. Jia dove toward the shuttle door. A blast of energy hit the ground where she had stood just a second before, leaving a black mark on the metal floor. Captain Kraz roared, showing his sharp teeth. "No one steals from the Vorg. The blue meat is mine." Han grabbed a tool from his belt and threw it at the captain. The heavy wrench hit Kraz on the arm, making him drop his weapon. But the captain was only angry now, not hurt. He charged toward them, his claws extended. "Close the door," Jia yelled through the translator. Han hit the button to close the shuttle door, but it moved too slowly. Captain Kraz reached them before the door could fully close. His clawed hand grabbed the edge of the door, forcing it open again. The Vorg captain was incredibly strong. His muscles bulged as he pushed the door, breaking the motor that controlled it. Han and Jia backed away inside the small shuttle. "You thought you could trick me, human," Kraz growled. "I knew there was no inspection treaty. I let you in to see what you would do." Han reached for another tool, but he had nothing that could fight a Vorg. The captain was twice his size and covered in tough scales. Kraz stepped into the shuttle. "Now I will have 2 meals instead of 1. He swung his arm at Han, hitting him hard across the chest. Han flew backward, crashing into the shuttle wall. Pain exploded in his ribs. Something was broken. Jia looked around desperately for a weapon. She saw the emergency kit on the wall and pulled it open. Inside was a flare gun, a bright light used for emergencies in space. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but it was all they had. As Kraz moved toward Han to finish him, Jia raised the flare gun and fired. The bright flare hit the captain directly in his yellow eyes. Kraz screamed, covering his face. Vorg eyes were sensitive to light, and the flare had temporarily blinded him. Han forced himself to stand despite the pain. He stumbled to the shuttle controls and started the engines. "We need to get out of here now." But Kraz, even blinded, wasn't giving up. He swung wildly around the shuttle, his claws tearing through equipment. One lucky strike caught Jia on the arm, cutting deeply into her blue skin. Jia cried out in pain and fell to the floor. Blue blood flowed from the wound. Seeing Jia hurt made something change in Han. A feeling rose in him, a powerful anger he had never felt before. Humans called it adrenaline, the body's response to extreme danger. Han grabbed a metal bar that had broken off from the shuttle door. With a yell that surprised even himself, he swung it at Kraz's head. The bar connected with a loud crack. For the first time, the captain looked afraid. Han didn't stop. He hit Kraz again and again, driving him back toward the shuttle door. "You will not hurt her," Han shouted between blows. "You will not hurt anyone ever again." With one final push, Han forced the captain out of the shuttle. Kraz fell backward onto the docking bay floor. Han quickly hit the emergency override for the door, forcing it closed despite the damaged motor. He turned to Jia, who was holding her injured arm. "Are you okay?" Jia nodded, though she was clearly in pain. "You saved me." Again. Han started the shuttle engines at full power. The docking bay doors were still open from Jia's earlier hack into the system. Outside was open space and freedom. As the shuttle lifted off, they could see more Vorg running into the bay. But it was too late. The small ship shot forward, out of the docking bay, and into space. Han set a course away from the Vorg ship, pushing the engines as fast as they could go. His hands shook on the controls, partly from pain and partly from the fading adrenaline. "We did it," he said, his voice tired but happy. "We actually escaped." Jia moved to sit next to him at the controls. She looked at Han with wonder in her dark eyes. Humans, very brave, very strong. Han smiled despite his pain. "Only when we need to be." Behind them, the Vorg ship was growing smaller, but a new problem was appearing on the shuttle's sensors. The Vorg had launched smaller ships to chase them. The escape wasn't over yet. The shuttle's warning system beeped loudly. 3 Vorg fighter ships were gaining on them. "They're faster than us," Han said, looking at the scanner. His ribs hurt with every breath. "We won't make it back to the outpost before they catch us." Jia was examining her wounded arm. The blue blood had slowed, but the cut was deep. She looked up at Han's words and saw the pain on his face. "You hurt too," she said through the translator. Han nodded. "Just some broken ribs. Nothing we can do about it now." The shuttle shook as a blast from a Vorg fighter hit their shields. The shield level dropped to 60%. "One more hit like that, and we're in trouble," Han said. Jia suddenly reached for Han's hand. Her blue fingers were cool against his skin. "My people have gift," she said. "Can help. Trust me." Han looked into her dark eyes and nodded. "I trust you." Jia placed her hand on Han's injured side. She closed her eyes and made a soft humming sound. A gentle blue glow spread from her fingers into Han's body. Han gasped as a strange feeling moved through him. It wasn't exactly painful, but it felt like tiny fish were swimming inside his ribs. After a few seconds, the pain began to fade. "How did you do that?" Han asked in amazement. "Nebulan healing," Jia explained. "We can fix small damages. Only works on compatible species." She looked surprised. "Never thought humans compatible." Another blast hit the shuttle, dropping the shields to 30%. They were running out of time. Han looked at the shuttle controls, thinking fast. "The mining outpost has defense systems. If we can get close enough, they'll help us." He changed course, heading toward the asteroid where the human outpost was built. But the Vorg were still gaining. Jia pointed to the shuttle's engine controls. "I have idea." She explained through the translator that they could release a burst of energy from the engines that might disable the Vorg ships temporarily. It would use most of their remaining power, but it might give them the time they needed. "Let's do it," Han agreed. Together, They modified the engine controls. Han's knowledge of the shuttle systems and J's understanding of energy patterns made a good team. When everything was ready, Han pressed the button. A wave of blue energy shot out from the back of the shuttle. It spread out like ripples in water, hitting all 3 Vorg ships. Their lights flickered and went dark as their systems shut down. "It worked," Han shouted. "That gives us a few minutes." The shuttle sped toward the mining outpost. As they approached, Han sent an emergency signal. He knew Sue would be angry, but that didn't matter now. "Mining outpost HFY-7. This is Han. I need immediate landing clearance and defense systems activated. I have Vorg fighters on my tail." Sue's voice came back immediately. "Han, what have you done? Return to base now. Defense systems powering up." Large guns appeared from hidden spots on the asteroid's surface. They turned toward the approaching Vorg ships, which were just beginning to move again after the energy pulse. The outpost's guns fired, sending powerful energy blasts at the Vorg. 2 fighters exploded immediately. The third turned and fled back toward the main Vorg ship. Han landed the shuttle in the outpost's bay. Sue and a team of security officers were waiting, weapons ready. When the door opened and they saw Han with a blue-skinned alien, everyone froze. "This is Jia," Han said simply. "I rescued her from the Vorg. They were going to eat her." Sue lowered her weapon slowly. "You risked everything for an alien you didn't know." Han nodded. It was the right thing to do. Jia stepped forward and spoke through the translator. "Human Han, saved my life. Now Nebulans will know humans, our friends." In the days that followed, Han's actions changed everything. The mining company contacted Earth Command, who sent official representatives to meet with Jia. It was the first official contact between humans and Nebulans. Jia's people sent a ship to bring her home, but before leaving, she visited Han in the medical center where his ribs were being properly treated. "My people want alliance with humans," she told him. "Together, we can fight Vorg, protect others." Han smiled. From enemies to allies because of one rescue mission. Not bad. Jia placed her cool blue hand on Han's. The translator was getting better at changing her words. "Not just alliance," she said. "Friendship. You showed what humans truly are. Brave, kind, protectors." Before she left, Jia gave Han a small blue crystal from her world. "Remember," she said, "you were seconds away from becoming dinner." Han laughed. "And you were seconds away from becoming alien BBQ." Their unlikely friendship would be the start of something much bigger than either of them had imagined.